So I flew to Staten Island, and I spent probably 2 weeks with my dad, for the most part, other family members, but really just me and my dad. And my dad and I had a great relationship. We had very different, if you've heard me talk about my dad, the former New York City police officer, we had different political opinions, and which made it interesting. You know?
And he knew this about you, right?
Oh, yeah. He heard
so
me
you didn't try to hide it?
No, he heard me on the radio.
Right.
He was my biggest fan. He'd listen to every show, and he'd say, how can you believe that? But there was a moment toward the end there in the hospital, because he was passing, that he became very sick. And he got very sick, and I went to the nurse's station. He was vomiting and getting very ill. I went to the nurse's station, and all I remember saying, Jennifer, was I said, he's lived such an honorable life that what he doesn't deserve at this point is to be in any pain. He doesn't deserve that. The morphine kicked in pretty quickly. And as the morphine was kicking in, I was holding my dad's hand, and his eyes got heavy. And I didn't know we were going back to politics under the morphine.
But he did.
But he did. And his eyes got kind of heavy, and he turned to me and he said, Brian, my son, he called me, my son. He said, tell me something. I said, Dad, anything. I said, I'll tell you anything. And ask me anything. Because we knew this was
coming close.
We were saying goodbye.
Yeah.
And I said, ask me anything. He said, how is it? And he's struggling for the words because the morphine is having an impact. How is it that a guy like you gets hooked up with a guy like him?
Uh-oh.
I didn't understand the question. So I asked him to repeat it. I said, I'm sorry, Dad. How does a guy like you, Brian, get hooked up with a guy like him? I thought he meant my on-air radio partner at the time. I said, do you mean Tim Conway Jr.? He said, no, I love Tim. I said, who are you talking about? How does a guy like me get hooked up with a guy like him? Like who? And he said, the former president. I said, Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
He said, yeah.
We all want better for you, Brian.
How does a guy like you, my son, get hooked up with a guy like him?
So funny.
I took my father's hand. I said, Dad, I'm not hooked up with him. And I said, but he is a character, huh? And my dad said, oh, boy, is he ever. Like a scene from a movie, I'm walking next to my father on the gurney, and we're walking very quickly. And I'm holding his hand, and I said, I'm going to be with you, Dad. I'm going to be with you, Dad. I'm coming with you. They're going now. They're going to help you out downstairs, and they're going to do the very best they can for you. My father was anything. Stupid was not one of them. And the elevator doors open. And I had stopped calling my father Daddy at about 5 years old because I felt like Daddy was a term that babies use. The elevator door opens, and there's my father on the gurney. I have his hand, and I said, Dad, I want you to know that when you wake up from this procedure, whether you know it or not, I'm going to be right there, and I'm going to be holding your hand. And he said, thank you, Brian. And he said, I love you. And without thinking, at 32, I said, and I love you, Daddy. For my dad and yours, happy Father's Day.